In this video, I'm going to show you how to do the color matching portion of the Optical Mixtures project. This is the preparatory assignment that we're going to do before we start the final image. So in this process, we're going to be first mixing 5 colors that we find in our nature object, and then also completing the broken color section of this exercise. So I started by squeezing out a little bit of each one of my colors of gouache that I'm going to be using for this. So I have white, both of my yellows, both of my blues, and both of my reds. You'll notice that I don't have black out there because I know how to mix neutrals using colors and the pigments that we've used before, so I don't need black. I'm gonna go in order from light to dark in my color selections just to keep it organized, but you can go in whatever order you would like. Looking at this object, I picked it because it is very neutral, so I can show you how to go about mixing some of these super neutral colors, and also to demonstrate how you can still find some really interesting and beautiful colors even in a seemingly very plain or neutral object. So I'm going to start out with the lightest color, which is kind of takes up the most space of my rock, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give that color a name. So I'm going to call it a very light neutral yellow or yellow orange. And that's going to help me decide what to start with or where to start mixing. I'm actually going to start with white because it's going to be very light and I want to make sure I don't make it too dark. So I'm going to start with white and I'm going to add to that first yellow to make it easy. So I'm going to mix up both of my yellows almost like I did with my color wheel to make a pure yellow, or sort of a primary yellow. If it's helpful, you can get out your color wheel and look at it to assist with deciding on how to mix some of the neutrals. So there's yellow that I'm going to start with. Obviously, that's nowhere near a color that I see in this rock. So how do I get to it? Well, I need to neutralize this yellow, and I'm going to neutralize it by mixing its complement in. So the complement of yellow is going to be violet. So I'm going to go ahead and mix violet, and you can look at the color wheel assignment page again if you need to remember which pigments to use. So I'm going to mix the cool blue with the cooler red to get violet. And now I'm going to mix little bits of this violet in with the yellow to attempt to neutralize it. So it's going to become neutral pretty fast. And now, so I can see if I'm going in the right direction, I'm going to mix this white with it. All right, so this is already starting to look more like a color that might be represented in my rock. I think it's too yellow. I think that it needs to be a little bit, moving a little bit more towards orange. So now that I have something to react to, I know what colors I want to add to modify that. So I'm going to add actually a little bit of the warmer red, just a little bit at a time, to move it a little more towards orange. Okay, getting closer. Tiny bit more red. All right, that's getting pretty close. I'm going to neutralize it a little bit more. All right, that's pretty close to the color I was trying to mix. I'm going to add a little more white because I know that the gouache dries darker. So I want to make sure, since this is my lightest color, that it's light enough. Great, so now I'm going to fill in this color in my solid color section, which is this middle part. So you can see I drew the lines and then I lightened them a lot with an eraser first so that if any of the colors are a little transparent, the graphite lines won't show through. I'm using my biggest brush here because I'm pretty confident that I can fill in that rectangle with it. I'm gonna do that first. All right, and now I'm going to use this same color and move on to my broken color section. Now I'm going to complete the broken color section alongside the solid colors because I already have the color in front of me. If it's too confusing for you, you can do them separately. It just means that you might have to mix the colors again. So I eventually want this entire rectangle to be filled in. I don't want any white spaces to show if I can help it. So I want this section to represent the object as a whole. I want to think about the proportions of each color that are in the object, not where they're located on the object. So there's a large majority of the rock that is made out of this light neutral yellow. So I'm going to put a lot of dots of this color here. And I can always add more later if I have enough of the color. But I'm going to try to do it without being too mechanical. So trying to make them sort of random. They don't all have to be exactly the same size or the same distance from each other or anything like that. But I'm going to make a large portion of this area be filled in with these dots. And I'm using the second smallest round brush, the one with the kind of pointed end for this. This is another reason why I'm going from light to dark, because I know that it'll be easy to put the darker colors over the lighter colors than vice versa. All right, I might come back and add more later, but that's good for now. Move on to the next color. So the next darkest color that I can see in this rock is, I would call it a neutral warm color. It's maybe a little more orange. So I'm going to start with orange and then neutralize it from there. So I'm using the warm red and the warm yellow to make orange. And then from there, I'm going to add the complement of orange, which is blue, to neutralize it. Okay, so mixing the two blues together to make a primary blue. I'm gonna add a little bit to this orange to neutralize it. All right, so this neutral color looks a little too green. To me, I wanted it to be more of a neutral orange. So I'm gonna add more of the colors that I mixed to make orange, except I know that if I keep adding more yellow to this, it's gonna keep getting more green. So I'm just gonna add the red for now. Okay, that's starting to represent more of the neutral brown orange color that I was envisioning. But it still needs to be significantly lighter, so I'm gonna add a lot of white. And a little more yellow now. Okay, that looks pretty good. Once again, I'm gonna add a little extra white because I know that it dries darker. Get my big flat brush back. And fill in the next solid area. Now that still looks a little too dark to me, so I'm going to add a little more white. Now I'm going to apply this color to the broken color area. This one occupies less space than the latest one, like maybe about half as much. So I'm going to put half as many dots of this color. I'm trying to get them in the white spaces. I'm also not being too precious about it. Okay, next color. I see a warm-ish gray that I think is most closely related to violet. So I'm going to start with violet and neutralize it from there. I already have this violet mixed up here, so I might as well use that. So to neutralize it, I'm going to add some yellow. I already have this color and I have a lot of it, so why not try adding a little bit of that to it, since it has the same components. Okay, I think it needs to be a little bit more red than this. So I'm going to add a little bit of red. So now it's a little bit more of a red violet, which means that to neutralize it, I would need a yellow green. I'm going to start out by just using a little bit of cool yellow. All right, that's getting closer to what I see. That actually looks pretty good. See if it's different enough and darker enough than that. I think it needs a little bit more violet. And then a tiny bit more white. Great. Okay. Paint this one on. Okay, great. Now for the broken color. There is about the same amount of this color, I think, as the last one that I painted, so, which is, you know, about half the amount of the first one. Keep those proportions in mind. All right, the next color is going to be a cool gray that I see. And I want to start with blue for that. And I already have some blue that I mixed here, which is great. So I'm going to start with this. And then in order to neutralize that, I need to mix some orange in. And again, since I already have this neutral orange that I made, I might as well use a little bit of that. Otherwise, I could mix another orange and add it to this, but I think this is a good starting place. Okay, more blue. And that looks a little more green than I want it to, or a little more blue-green than I want it to. But if I add yellow to it, it's gonna get more green. I wanna add some red. I would say red-violet to continue neutralizing it and making it look more gray. I'm gonna add some of the cool red. Just a little bit more. All right, that's starting to get there, tiny bit more. Okay, I think it's still a little, still feels a little bit too chromatic. I want it to be more gray. So right now I'm gonna call this, it still looks to me sort of like a blue-green. So the complement of blue-green would be red-orange. So I'm gonna add a tiny bit of the warm red. See if that helps. Okay, great. That looks very gray. Now it's too dark, so I need to add some white. Great. Paint that on there. Just went over the line a little, but I'll fix it with the next one. Okay, and now for the broken color. I would say there's even less of this one. So I'm going to try to spread out my dots even a little bit more for this color. All right, last color, the darkest one, it's a dark brown. If I had to give it a hue name, I would say it's a dark red-orange. That's what I would choose. So I'm gonna mix red-orange, the warm red plus a little bit of the warm yellow. Now the complement of red-orange is going to be a blue-green. So that's what I need to mix with this to make it more neutral, and it will also make it darker. So for blue-green, I need to use my warm blue. And a little bit of my cool yellow. So I'm going to take a little bit of this at a time and mix it with my red-orange. See how quickly that's already getting brown? It's great. It's already pretty close to the color that I want. Yeah, it's actually very close. I am going to lighten it just a tiny bit. I think it just needs a tiny bit of a cooler red. Okay, I'm gonna lighten it just a touch so that it doesn't get too dark. All right, so there are my 5 solid colors, and I think they actually turned out to be pretty attractive as far as palette goes. I got a nice range of hues in there, and then optically when you mix them all together, they make a neutral that looks like this rock. I'm gonna put this darkest brown dots in my broken color section. I need the fewest of these, so I'm going to make these pretty spread out. My solid color section didn't exactly end up being in perfect value order. The values of those 2 middle neutrals, one cool and one warm, ended up being similar to each other. But like I said, it's up to you if you want to try to maintain a value structure to that or not, it doesn't actually matter. Okay. I have now used all of the colors in my broken color section. However, I still have some white showing, and also I feel like the overall feeling of the broken color section, or the overall appearance of the color, is too dark. So I'm gonna try to fill in the remaining white areas with my lightest color, because I think I could use some more of that. So luckily I have a bunch of it still over here. And I'm gonna go ahead and fill in those remaining spots with this light neutral yellow. It would be best if I waited for the darker brown to dry to do this, so they don't smear or blend. So do your best to fill the whole thing in. If there's a couple white spaces showing, it's not the end of the world, but the white of the paper showing through affects the overall value that you see, so that's why we're trying to fill in the whole thing. If there were some other colors I felt like needed more of a presence in here, this would be a stage where I could add those in as well. But once again, I would wait until one color is dry before you paint the other, because I can even see my colors are blending with each other here a little, the dark brown that I just painted and this light yellow. Okay, so that actually looks like a pretty good representation of the rock, I think. If anything, maybe I would add a little bit more of the cool gray. I'll add a few more of those dots. See if I can do it without too much smearing. So you can see I'm not trying to apply the dots in a way that they're representing the different areas of the rock. I'm just giving an overall feeling as if I was looking at the rock from really far away. What would be the overall color of it? And this is what I've come up with. So this is what you're gonna do for the first part with the gouache painting to represent your object, and then we'll talk about how to do the third portion of this after we finish the gouache.